Once again, welcome to the Kat and Nat Parenting Unfiltered podcast. I'm alone because it's Mother's Day and we were on tour, and I am just getting this podcast done like literally last minute, but that is sort of part of life right now because we are all over the place and we're traveling a ton in the next little bit. So welcome, because if you have kids, you know exactly what's going on. You really don't have a minute. This week's podcast is about risky teen behavior. And honestly, you're going to want to go listen to it because so much of what we try to do is help them avoid risk. But part of growing up is actually taking risks. So it's super hard to navigate between the two and understand which one you need to encourage and which one you need to be like, well, we don't want that one to be there. There's a 9-minute theory. Instead of trying to do it all, parents should focus on 3 key interactions with their kids during the day. The first 3 minutes after they wake up, the 3 minutes after they come home from school, and the last 3 minutes before they go to bed. I love that. It's attainable. I think all of us can do that. I think that so often we forget to just take a few minutes and like connect with them. And I mean, after school may be hard, but that might be more of like when you get home from work. And I honestly think that if you go for a walk with them, if you put them in the car, there really is a time when they just begin to talk and they just tell you everything. And I think sometimes even just sitting there in silence or being present with them really does connect them in a way that they need and you didn't even know you needed. Showing up for them is huge in those ways. And I think even 3 minutes, being like aware of those minutes, being like, I am going to zone in on you, helping them with their homework or cooking dinner, anything where you can just give them some of your time, I think really does make a difference. And I think if you're conscious that it only has to be 3 minutes, it really is such a more attainable, this notion of a date night or this notion of having to connect on such a grand scale, which is like weekends away or making individual time for hours. That is just not an attainable thing, honest to gosh, especially if more than one kid and then you have sports on top of that and then you have a job or just life. Like there's no way any of us are able to give an hour each day to each kid. I can barely even get the dog walk in, let alone focusing on each one. Researchers say that focusing on high quality conversation during these 3 key moments throughout your kid's day is strong enough to maintain a connection. The question is, do you think this would work for your family? 84% of responders to our newsletter in the CAT poll, they said they tried out. Some were like, it feels like lazy parenting. Honestly, you tell me the solution and then I'll look into it. But I think focusing in on the 3 minutes is so much better than just going all in or all out. Like, I don't know. I think some days you have great days. I think some weeks you have great weeks. I think sometimes there's a kid who needs you more in the family than not. I think sometimes there's a kid who takes up more of your attention. And I think those 3 minutes, like reminding you of 3 minutes, might just help with the connection with the other kid, because sometimes it really can be one kid is taking 4 or 5 hours of your day just because that's the nature of parenthood and motherhood. And they just sort of scoop you up and they're like, okay, I want all of your attention. So, I mean, I think 3 minutes, if it makes you feel good, and it's better than no minutes, in my opinion. The next story is why risky behavior increases during teenhood. I mean, I think we all know it does. I think we all know, we've seen the stories of kids on the subways. It is a huge thing right now. This like going on roofs and filming yourself in buildings. It is wild to actually see it. It's primarily because they increase in the sensation seeking that are linked to their brain. It's around development and puberty, and teens require higher levels of stimulation, leading them to seek out new experiences and driving them to make riskier decisions. I would totally agree that it's developmentally normal. It's kind of what we all did, and I feel like it's what they all do. They're reckless, and we need to figure out, like I said in the intro, how to sort of buffer the top to the bottom. Like, how do we help you take the risks and develop normally without totally being like, no, don't do this, don't do that. I think there are good risks, and it builds confidence. The right risks build confidence. That is like a known fact. So I think that definitely it is something we all need to consider. And I think some kids are really risk adverse. And I think for some of us, we wish our kids would take more risks. And I think risky behavior doesn't necessarily have to be dangerous behavior. I think we have to really define the line of what we think risk is and how we want to define the risk, and not overcomplicate the risk, and really begin to support the risks they're taking and help them feel developed in that process without squashing their ability to grow confidence and develop properly. I mean, I've listened to a lot of podcasts recently talking about how we have made the outdoors so scary for the kids. They no longer go out kind of into the world, but they've all gone on to online. So I think that at some point we're going to have to start unpacking risky behavior online and risky behavior in the real world. And at this point, I'd way rather them take the risky behaviors in the real world, because I feel like if they don't, it will go into online. And if you're developmentally having to do that, that is something that we're all going to have to navigate, and it's not something we can run away from, or it's not something that we can't not do, or we're basically skipping a step in development. And I think that's a really big conversation to have around how can we help them have these developmental milestones that we're all so afraid of, because now we can track them, now we can see where they are, now we can constantly mitigate circumstances that help them grow. And you kind of got to do baby steps. You can get in trouble when you're in 12, and it's a different trouble than when you're 18. And I think that they need to take those missteps in order to grow and learn what their bubble and what their boundaries are. That's just my opinion. I do feel like sometimes we know too much about the risky behavior, and I think that we need to help in some way, help them not only have behaviors that are risky, but it could be as simple as taking a chance on a new team. It could be as simple as, interviewing for a job you might not get. It might be going out of your comfort zone. Those are all risks, and risky behavior and taking risks are two very different things. It may be, letting them go farther alone, gaining independence. Yeah, that's risky, has a risk. But I think that it's important they go and try those things. So weigh in. Let me know your thoughts. I think so often we are constantly like, red alert, danger, danger with our kids. But I think we forget how much we did. I mean, if you weren't in a field at some age between the ages of 14 and 18, I don't know where you were. A park, a field, a lot of behaviors we did when we look back as adults, we're like, oh my God, we are so dumb. But we were also developing. So if we're not letting them develop, what's happening? Because there will be a consequence for them not doing these behaviors. Just my 2 cents. Take a listen to this awesome podcast. It does have some great tips, and also has some tools for you to navigate exactly how and where and when all of the risky behaviors can be supported versus basically squashed. I hope y'all are having a great day. Well, go listen to the podcast and have a great day. How about that?
Okay, we are so excited to have Phinnah. Chichi is a parenting consultant and coach who specializes in supporting parents of tweens and teens. That's us, as they guide their teens through the challenges and changes of the adolescent years in ways where they both grow together to avoid the break in relationships that are all too common. That is exactly the time. And right now, it is that feeling where we no longer have our babies anymore, and there's definitely a breakdown, and we need help. You need help growing together.
Yes. That's the key. That's the key.
I guess no, thank you. I guess the question for a lot of parents is have they always been reactive? Like our emotional regulation, is this something that we start with at a young age, or does it amp up when they're teenagers? And we've lost the plot because the behaviors are bigger and our reactions can't get any bigger because when they spilled milk, we lost our minds, and now they're, sneaking behind our back. So what is that?
So there are 2 things. So the reactions have always been there, because we learned those reactions from when we were growing up and from all the adults that we had when we were growing up. But it was kind of suppressed because we didn't need to use it all the time, because as children, when they were much younger, they're kind of going with the flow. Yes, they may have some rough patches, spill milk, not do their homework, all those little things in comparison to now that they're teenagers. Now, in the second part is the teenage brain. The teenage brain is doing a lot more in the teenage years, and parents are feeling out of control because we can't control them the way we used to control them before. And that's where the reaction, it's now amplifying more because we're trying to hold on to that control. We're trying to get back that baby that we were all kind of cuddling and all that stuff. But that baby is no more here. That baby now has a focus on their friends who kind of are more, they feel that what their friends think about them is actually more important than what we feel about them. So their brain is in that mode, and it's going to continue in that mode for a while because that part of their brain, the logical part of their brain, is still developing. It's still going to happen until they're about 25. So, yes.
You know, what I just think it's important, Phinnah, for people to understand when they hear the word control, they're like,
Yeah.
I am not control. I was never controlling. Or parents who, what can we define maybe, or give an example of what control might look like when they were younger and what it might look like now for us as changing parents?
Awesome. Great question. So control is like when they were younger, you direct them to do things. And that was a normal language. Okay, can you go do this? Go and do that. You're just expecting them to go and do it there and then. That's the expectation. Now, what happens is in the teenage years, that control now needs to shift to collaboration. So you still have a bit of control, but now I actually term it more of influence than control. Because with control, you're dictating, okay, go and do this now. I'd like you to do this now. In the teenage years, you're asking, when do you have the time to get this done? I'd love to see these things done. When would you have the time to get it? The reason you want to now do more collaboration with them is you also want to help them develop their critical thinking. So if you ask them, when are you going to do it? Then you give them the chance to think, okay, I'm not going to do it at 2:00. Maybe I'll do it around 6. You're helping them develop that critical thinking and decision-making skill that they need. Because if we expect them to do things as soon as we want them to do things, like we did when they were younger, what happens is they don't build that skill of making decisions. They go to school, they have negative peer pressure, they jump on it because they haven't built the skills to think first. Like, okay, you're telling me to do this stuff, but really, should I really do it? Or no, they haven't got that space to think through.
You are the first expert to give us the reason why you need to be the collaborator, not the controller. And it makes when there's a reason for it, because we're so afraid to let it go, it makes so much sense.
Yes.
Every parent is like, what age do I need to start collaborating? Or is there can you tell us, like, when they're 7 years and 9 months, it's time? Like, what if there was like a real time?
I know. And the funny thing is that the teenage brain is now like the teenagers are now starting teenagehood even earlier than teens. 11, 12-year-olds are already beginning to think like teenagers and act like teenagers. So in the past, I would have told you from 11, from 13. But now I'm actually even pushing it a bit further now to about 11, 10, 11 is when we start. But we start it in bits. We don't just, they're still developing. So we can't give them all the control. We start it in bits and bits. And so that they then see the responsibilities they have. Because what I tell my teenagers as well is that, okay, you're 13 now. Guess what? Okay, bedtime is going to change. Let's talk about what bedtime should be, or when we should take off the phones and stuff like that. I don't tell them, okay, 9:00, phones are all off. No, it's a collaboration thing. So you connect with them. You say, okay, what time should the phones come off? Guess what they're going to say? 12 midnight. Typical, isn't it? We all laugh about it. Oh, please get real. I tell them, get real, and then they'll say 11:30 and we'll start negotiating. I'll say 10. They say, no, Mom, what about 10:30? I say, okay, what about 10:15? You negotiate till you get to a comfortable stage. And your 10 o'clock may be your limit, but because they keep negotiating, you might say, okay, 5 minutes past 10. And then you guys agree on it. There, you guys have negotiated. You've helped them build that negotiating skill. We need our children to know how to negotiate.
Oh my gosh. I mean, that's just a life skill when they get out of the house. And that's a skill you're going to have to do all the time.
Exactly.
You know what's hard is that, when you say like you build a little bit, like starting early, is that sometimes it's hard as a parent because it's like, we know we're available to do a lot of things for them. And sometimes we have to force ourselves to let them do it on their own. Totally. Even though we're like, but we just want to take them there. We just want that.
Like what? Like doing what on their, like give an
so
example.
one example for me is that I know I am available to drive my kid to school, let's say, or I know I'm available to make them lunch or breakfast, and I easily could, but I feel like I have to get them to do it, even though I'm sitting right there, because if I don't get them to build that independence, the first time they're gonna have to do it is when I'm no longer there or they're living in another city, and that's really late to have learned those skills.
Totally.
But it's really hard as a mom sometimes to just step back and say, I can do it, but I need you to learn how to do it.
Yeah. We've got to think in this stage of motherhood, we've got to think of the long term. That's the way to parent them today. You're looking at them today, but your mind is about them in the future. That's the way, if you look at it with the bigger picture in mind, then you're able to deal with those feelings, because those are natural feelings. We're very nurturing. We want to help them. We want to get things done very fast. If I help her to do this stuff, it will be faster. We can all move on. But we've got to look at the bigger picture, because we want life to be easier for them when they grow up.
Of course, we want them to be capable by the time they leave. And I think another thing when you're talking about like telling them what to do, like 9 o'clock phones are done. You're like, if you say 9 and then they say 12 and then you end up coming somewhere in the middle. So for some parents, they're like, I didn't want them to win. I want it to be my way. And now they just won and they just can't get over that. It has to be a collaborative to learn that skill.
It's got to be, and it works. And that's why I keep telling parents, try it. I know why it's foreign to us, because we didn't grow up with it. Personally, for me, who dared me to start negotiating with my mom? But you know what?
Yeah.
I think, so we're not used to it. We didn't have it modeled to us. So it's normal that it's a struggle for many parents to do that. But what we can now do is learn how to do it.
But I guess if you've been doing it one way, right? Like, so I'm a control, let's just say I'm a control freak and I have a 15-year-old and, when they don't do what I want them to do and I get angry, so they do it.
Yes.
What, that cycle, how am I changing this all of a sudden? And why does my regulation, my anger matter? Like, how do it's a visceral response, right? Where you're just like,
yes.
How do I not get that response when it's a habit and it's what I grew up with? How do I do this?
Yes. So it's a decision you need to make. So it's what I tell parents is that it's been a habit that we've done. So it's very difficult to just say, okay, I'm changing. I'm not going to get angry anymore. Nah, it's not going to happen. Or we say, I'm not going to be like my parents. I'm not going to be like my parents. I'm going to do it differently. It doesn't work. What we have to decide is, okay, this is it. I want to change because of, you have your own specific reasons. This is your reason. I want to change because of this. Instead of me to do this, I'm going to do this. So you already have the replacements that you're going to, for that situation. Let's say, for example, I get angry when they haven't switched off their phones on time. Okay, in that situation, what am I going to do differently?
Do we tell them, hey, things are going to be different? No.
Yes. Yeah, no. Yes, we should, because what I tell parents is, let's tell them that, you know what? I'm learning. I've learned new things, and I think it's going to work.
I love that.
Yes.
Oh, I love that.
It's brilliant because I'm learning. Yes, because it encourages them as well to keep learning, knowing that learning never stops.
Wow. It's so funny sometimes if I'll like decide that I'm going to, I've learned something and I'm bringing it to the house. My daughter will be like,
They'll laugh. Yeah. Did you go to a webinar?
And I tell her, I did just learn something and it's going to work and it's going to be better for all of us. The other thing is, I find sometimes when you get into a conversation with your teens and you're not intending it to be an argument, and all of a sudden their voice sounds like so rude that you, in response, are sort of like, I guess you're kind of mirroring it even if you don't mean to. You think you're actually being like, this happens to me. I think I'm actually talking normal. And she says to me, why are you yelling and starting a fight? And I'm like, I am not trying to start a fight. You're being so rude. And then it turns into this thing. And then she walks away and she's like, you just started a fight. I'm like, I was literally just trying to respond to the way you were reacting. Like, how do you, in that way, when you sounds like they're being irrational, yes, and you're just trying to what you think sounds calm,
Mm-hmm.
how do you like take it down?
Calm it down. Yeah. So I encourage us not to even talk in that moment. So once you feel what works for parents, keep checking your emotions, keep checking how you feel. Just keep an eye on that. Once you feel yourself rising, getting frustrated about what they're doing, because that's normal. Our frustrations, our anger, it's very normal. There's nothing wrong about it. It's what we then do or say in that moment that matters. So I encourage parents, as soon as you feel your blood boiling, just kind of say, okay, let's talk about this later.
I'm going to be walking away every conversation.
It's okay. It's okay. Because guess what? You're going to come back to that conversation in a calmer tone. That's when you're then going to be able to do the correction. So you can say in the correction, I felt upset when you raised your tone at me. These are all in calmer situations. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I felt upset when you raised your thing at me. Sometimes I even tell them I felt hurt, like, ouch, that really hurts. So I'm saying that I statement, that really hurts when you said that. So I couldn't say anything much and I had to leave. But are we ready now? Can we talk about it? So you guys then talk about it. Tell them how you expect them. Because sometimes we assume that, oh, you spoke rudely to me, but then you don't tell them what to say in that situation. So I felt upset when you said that to me. I would prefer you if you had said that. Then you give them the model of what you would have preferred.
And you know, rather like, Phinnah, we have a journal, and I feel like when you write it out to each other, like if you know what you have a moment to actually see what you're saying and digest it differently. And I feel like a journal is a great place. It's just between the kid and the parent. You can go back and revisit what you meant to say and how you intended to sound, so you can go back. Is there ever a time appropriate to lose your bananas? Like, is there ever, or is that just never it never is going to end well?
So in an emergency, so let's say, for example, and we say this a lot for more about babies and stuff, you know, if a baby's going towards a hot scream and so there's a kind of emergency that can happen where that reaction can happen. But the key about that is that after it happens, how do we repair? Because we don't want to go walking around like perfect people, because we're not perfect. And we're not even aiming to be perfect. So we will have times where we scream. You know, the other day I had to when I saw my daughter's room, I was like, Tamara, what's going on here? Like, whoa. And then I said, you know what? I need to leave your room because I need to protect my mental health. Like, our room was in a state. But you know what I mean? So there will be times where, whoa, that will happen. But then it's how you get yourself back. And it's not leaving it too long. Because sometimes what we say in those times is what hits them the most.
Because it's often the truth, the meanest truth, in a way that means them. It's not constructive feedback. It's a mean truth.
It's a mean truth, exactly. And so that's the danger, because what happens is that a lot of those mean truths have piled up in their minds, has piled up, and teenagers are they're the experts of assumptions. They will assume, oh, she said that because she didn't love me. She said that because she hates me. She said that because she prefers me to someone. So they make all these stories up in their minds. And because we don't know those stories, so we don't counteract it. We don't defend it. They've made it up. And that's what they then act on.
You're constantly in a court you didn't know you were in. And and they are the jury, and they've made up their mind that you are.
And it's in those moments, it's like when people get so mad and then their truths all come out. It's almost like their anger and their heatedness is like a drunk person. There's just no filter. Everything comes out.
Exactly.
Why, Phinnah, do you think that as parents we feel entitled to the reactions and anger toward, like, I'm trying to figure out as a parent, what is our responsibility to emotional regulation to our teenagers, and like, why is it so important? Because I think that's what people miss is, why do we take it so personal, and why did they anger us so much?
I know. Yes. So the key is that they don't actually anger us. We're the ones that get angry. The anger is our choice. Mm-hmm. So that's the key. So the mindset shift is in that, even in that question, is the mindset shift where they don't anger us. We choose That anger is our choice. Because in that moment when we were triggered, we had a choice. So the important thing is for us to understand our triggers. Yes, there are things that are going to get upset. Understand our triggers and then decide what to do with it. The reason why our emotional regulation is so vital is because we are teaching them, we are modeling to them how to regulate their own emotions.
I hope everyone hears that. I hope everyone just heard what you said, because
yes,
that is exactly. Will you say it one more time so they can hear it?
I said the reason we need to work on our emotional regulation is because that's what we're modeling to them. We're teaching them that regulation. They're not going to learn emotional regulation in school. The teacher is not writing on the board, this is how you regulate. That's not common. The first place they're going to learn emotional regulation is with us.
Oh my gosh.
And it's
so
our reaction.
And you know what? I've seen myself do things, and then literally the next day I will see my kid do exactly what I did. And I'm like, he did that because he saw that's how I reacted in that situation.
Yeah. Spot on. So the more we regulate our emotions, the more they start to regulate their emotions, because they have a template. We're showing them the templates.
And you have a place where I think such a big problem is that, is it because we want them to love us at the end? We feel unloved, or it's our issue that we feel like we're not doing a good job, so we want to make them the way we think they should? Because I feel like, what are some of the things that parents can check in with to be like, hey, I need to get right with what my triggers are. Like, I need to if you have a really tense house, I'm assuming the parent has some work to do. If there's a lot of arguing going on,
yes,
it's probably you that needs to do some work.
Totally. And you know, your question is so spot on, because guess when it goes back to childhood? It all goes back to childhood. And there's a level of forgiveness and acceptance that we have to accept for what our inner child went through. And it doesn't mean that everybody went through any kind of trauma or anything. But again, as children, we made assumptions as well.
Mm-hmm.
We made assumptions. My dad died when I was 5 years old. No one told me what death was all about. So 5-year-old Phinnah said my dad rejected me and he left me. He died. But no one explained to me. So that rejection was what I grew up with. I feel rejected. Oh, they don't. Or I started people pleasing so that no one else leaves me, like the way my dad left me, because again, no one explained to the 5-year-old. So all of us have assumptions that we made when we were growing up. And one of the key things in parenting, especially parenting teenagers, is our self-care. How do we take care of ourselves? In the mornings, what are your practices that you do to get yourself back to a level-minded person? So that when you then face the triggers and the issues in life in that day, you are kind of leveled up about it. I forgave myself. I said, 5-year-old Phinnah didn't know. I can't blame her. So I can't be chasing around people and, jumping for friendships that are not needed just because I don't want to feel rejected. So each parent has something that they're still holding onto, that they need to release, and releasing it through your daily practices. Self-care is so key, because any little thing can then trigger us. We're trying to avoid that hurt that we had when we were young people. And that's why our teenagers can so trigger us. Because if they don't do what we said they should do, we subconsciously, we go back to our childhood. What did I didn't get away with this kind of stuff. How do they think they can get away with it?
Yes.
And that's
so much of that. I feel so much of that these days too.
Yes.
Because we are, kids are just so, they're living a different life than what we lived, but the reason that we're treating it different now is because we've learned. I have a specific question. I've heard other people talk about it, and I've heard it in my house too. When the kids say that one is your favorite, or they say I'm your least favorite, do they actually think that and feel that, or are they just looking for attention? If they say it often, do they believe it?
They do.
Oh, great.
Sorry, but they do. Yeah, they don't say that out of just saying it. They've actually had a thought before. So a lot of times our responses to those thoughts is very important. what the first thing that many of us do is we dismiss it. Oh, you don't know what you're talking about. Oh, that's not true.
Yeah.
So the response we need is we need to validate their feelings on that. Oh, I'm sorry you feel that way. Oh, really? Do you feel that way? What do I do that makes you think that I favor the other person? Get into that conversation with them, because that's what's going to break that assumption they have. If we just brush it to the side and say, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, that's not true, I don't do that, we're just suppressing it, but we've not answered, we've not dealt with it. So I want to know, what is it that I do that's making you think that? Mm-hmm. And if they tell me what I do, then I can go and work more on that and change that a bit.
Yeah.
Because it's coming from somewhere. And I love those kind of comments when they're young people. Even when my teenager says, oh, Mom, you never listen. First time she told me I never listen. I never listened. I thought I was the listening expert, So I said, but what do I do to show you that I'm listening?
Right.
And she says, when I'm listening, that I always I nod my head a lot, so she knows I'm listening. So guess what? When I'm talking to her now, I nod my head more so that she understands that I'm listening. But my son on the other side, when I asked him that question, he said, I repeat what he has said to make sure that I understood. That's his way of, that's his listening language. That's what I mean. And so now when I'm talking to him, I'm like, oh, really? So are you saying that this? Okay, now I get it. So two of them, I talk to them in the way they understand that I listen, because I don't want them to have that assumption that I don't listen. Therefore, they go and share issues with other people because they think, don't need to talk to Mom because she's not going to listen.
Yeah. And I think when they're little kids and they say things like that, it doesn't, you don't feel it as much, but when they're getting older and they start saying those kind of things, you're like, I only have a little bit more time left with you to break that assumptions down before you take that away forever.
Exactly. And members, if you have your journal, I will ask my kids, how can I be a better mom? What can I do differently to be a better mom? It's hard to hear, but put it in your journal, write it down and see what they say, because I feel like even letting them give you the space to say it is something that they're like, really? And then they will tell you, and you're like, okay, I will get better at doing that. Oh my God.
Yeah. I do that every year, every new year. I call my children together and I say, what could have I done differently? Because every year, especially as they grow older, I've got two, my other son is in college now. In college, they have more time to think through of their childhood. They hear from other people. They get time to reflect. So every new year when we have our family meeting, I always ask them, what do you think I could have done differently?
Wow.
And
I love that.
I asked them, yes, what do you think I could have done differently? And then they will share. Well, one said the other one was saying, oh, I didn't like it when if Dad said something, then you exchanged words back and forth. I said, okay, I'm sorry, because I knew that even though he's 23, he's not talking as a 23-year-old. He's talking to me as the 8-year-old, what he felt at that point. So I had to apologize to that 8-year-old.
And also, parents listening, the core memories they have will blow your mind, because my daughter pulled out a comment about a bird and a grandmother and I don't even remember where we were, and she remembered the Twinkie she was served, and I was like, what? And it kind of scared me, because I'm like, oh my God, you have your own memories that aren't mine. I'm like, wait, I thought that was a part. Oh my God, you have experiences outside of me, so it's so interesting to also realize that. Phinnah, last question, because you've been so generous with your time. What, as parents, can we do? What does a trigger feel like? Because I think that's new for a lot of parents, is not even knowing what's coming. And even we say trigger, they're like, sorry, I am too busy to think about what I am feeling. I am parenting. They are stealing and running out the door. Like, help me. What is that feeling that they can start to work on themselves that will change the relationships of the house?
So the first, how they're even going to catch that feeling is to have a reflective moment for themselves. So they kind of look back to their reactions. Okay, I was angry when he just came in and slammed the door. Okay, you just think about that situation that made you angry. That's how you're going to pick the trigger in it. What about that situation got me angry? Okay. So situation and anger, situation and frustration. Because if we don't get those two things together, we will forget even the situation. We only think of the anger that came with it. So let parents do a reflective moment of, okay, I got really upset yesterday. Yesterday was not a good day. Go back. What happened? And then your anger. what happened, and then the frustration. Then you can then tie the two things. Why was I angry about that door that slammed? There are some assumptions we've made for that door that slammed. They were disrespectful. Maybe they thought I was nothing. Maybe they thought they can just get away with it. There were some thoughts that went through, very quick thoughts that we didn't catch, that then made us react. Because those reactions come from a thought.
I like right now, I'm specifically thinking about a time that makes me really angry, and I'm thinking about the few times, and they have one of the same things in common, is that when I am nice enough to go and drive you somewhere to something you want to do, and your shit isn't ready when I told you what time we were going to leave, I can't handle that.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, because it's almost like there's that, you feel that they're not grateful for the sacrifice that you're making. You're expecting that sacrifice you're making to be rewarded with being on time, getting the things done. So that's because that need is a need that you've not gotten in that moment. And is that need that has triggered. Is that need that has triggered that thing. Yes.
And in a calm moment, I could go back at a time when we're not late and let them know this is why I get so upset in this time.
Exactly. Yes.
To avoid that all happening, why don't we back it up and get organized the night before?
Exactly. And it's got to be in a calm time. I had a parent 2 days ago that asked me, how can I connect with my 13-year-old when he's angry, when we're all frustrated? I said, you can't. Leave connecting. In that angry mode, leave connecting. Come back to it at a later time. In that angry mode, they can't think right. They're not using their logical side of the brain, so they can't hear us. Corrections can be done in advance or later. They don't have to be done. It's not an emergency.
Oh, yeah. I love that. Yeah. I love that. Where can people find you? Where can they, I want to move in with you. Do you do courses? Like what is happening? It makes so much sense.
Yes, they can find me on the Parenting Teen Solutions. We've got an Instagram page, Parenting Teen Solutions, and then I've got my separate page, Phinnah Chichi, but I share both parenting and just inspirational stuff on my page. And yes, we have courses, we have programs that we do, and a lot of the information is on my bio. We're working on my website right now to add some more things to it. So most of the information. I have a podcast. I've got a podcast. Yes, sorry, I've got a podcast. Parenting Teen Solutions.
We'll link that. We will link that. That is really. I can't wait. We'll link it for everybody.
Thank you.
Oh gosh, you make so much sense, and thank you for giving us the why. I think a lot of people miss that. So really appreciate your time and
you're welcome.
Your insights, and I feel like I feel invigorated. Like I'm ready to go.
But I also feel like I've got a few things to do coming in the new year. I got to ask them a question. I got to back up, get calm, have some conversations. I got to.
And that's what parenting. That's what parenting is about: learning, unlearning, and relearning. That's what it's about.
And it's okay to admit it. Chloe will give you all.
Very okay. It's very, very okay. And each stage that they get onto, my daughter's 17. By the time she's 18, I'm going to have to unlearn some things. Some ways that I'm parenting her now, I need to unlearn them and relearn other ways to now parent an 18-year-old. So it's a continuous learning, unlearning, and relearning journey. That's what it is.
That's a good mindset to be in.
Yeah.
Totally.
All right. Well, thank you. We will link everywhere in your podcast. Thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you so much. You guys, you asked lovely questions, and thank you so much. I enjoyed it.
They're never selfish. We appreciate
No, it's good. It's good because it's relatable. It's relatable. Every parent goes through these things. So awesome.
They're all the same.
They're all the same. Honestly.
Thank you so much.
We're great.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Take
Okay.